We've hit another new decade and we're starting it off with another collection of novellas. Here are 19 reasons to read If It Bleeds. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Dave Musson, at Dave Musson on Instagram, and this is a place where I talk to you about Stephen King and give you 19 reasons to read each and every one of his books. If that sounds like something you'd like more of, click around the channel, subscribe if you like what you see, and maybe check out some of the specials I've done as well, including my list of favourite Stephen King scary stories that are great for Halloween. And while you're looking for things to sign up for, maybe consider signing up for my newsletter. In the newsletter, you'll get a few updates from me, you'll get some indie horror authors to go and check out and broaden your reading horizons, and you'll get some free short stories from me every single issue as well. And not only that, as a thank you for signing up, you get my mini collection Mirrored plus 10 Tiny Tales of Terror as an ebook for free just for signing up. The link's up there, the link's down there, go and join the gang. So in our chronological journey through King, we've reached the celebrated, delightful, famous year that was 2020, and If It Bleeds, a collection of 4 previously unpublished novellas that King put out to try and help us stay sane while we were all locked inside. Now I'm going to give you 19 reasons to read this book, and I'm going to do it spoiler free. So you can watch the whole video whether or not you've already read this. Whatever, you can stick around, I'm not going to spoil anything for you. So, enough waffle from me, let's get into 19 spoiler-free reasons to read If It Bleeds. So we're in classic King territory with this, right? We've got 4 novellas grouped together into one book. It's echoing King's classic collections of a similar format like Different Seasons and Full Dark No Stars and 4 Past Midnight. These stories are snackable, they're really easy to get into, and they're a great starting point for a new King reader, or for a King reader who perhaps hasn't picked up a King book since the 80s. We've got a real mix of stuff going on here: horror, supernatural, characters who are writers, even Holly Gibney. There's loads to jump into. So this collection has a special place in my heart because it did come out in 2020 when the whole world was shut down, and King even brought forward the publication date to April from May so that me and all the other millions of constant readers around the world could get their hands on it sooner and just escape a really shitty reality for a few hours. And it's still a great means of escape for now. Sure, it's a bit of a nostalgic reason to read it, but actually I think the stories are still good enough for me to talk about it in such high terms. So the opening story is Mr. Harrigan's Phone, where our lead character, a young guy called Craig, gets a job reading the paper to an old rich man, Mr. Harrigan. And these two get on pretty well, as is often the way in King stories with a child and an older character. And later on, Mr. Harrigan gives Craig a scratch card that turns out to be a winning scratch card. Lots of money for young Craig, he's very excited, and as a thank you to Mr. Harrigan, he gets the old guy a then, as is the timeline of the story, a then first generation iPhone, because Mr. Harrigan is into his stocks and shares, and the ability to be able to keep track of everything from his pocket really, really appeals. They continue to bond. Mr. Harrigan likes the phone, but then sadly Mr. Harrigan, as old people do, he dies. But the interesting hook of this one is that thanks to that little phone, the connection between Craig and Mr. Harrigan doesn't necessarily die when the old guy does. Now this one is fun because it does 2 solid King things really well. A really good, heartwarming relationship between an older character and a younger character, and spooky shit. So more specifically on the spooky shit, without spoiling too much, well, iPhone assisted help from beyond the grave. Craig ends up getting bullied. He, in a moment of sadness, just leaves a voicemail on Mr. Harrigan's phone because he misses his friend. Then he gets a text back. And then the bully gets dealt with. Also, it's kind of fun to see a story treating an iPhone as a historical artifact. Always nice to feel old. So the second story collected here is my favourite, The Life of Chuck. A piece of literary King that is told in reverse in 3 parts and is a story about a guy called Chuck. So we start off in this weird post-apocalyptic almost world where everything seems to be literally falling apart and everything is covered in signs saying, "Thanks Chuck, 39 great years." It's weird, disorientating, but instantly captivating as well. Part 2 is an absolute joy. It's Chuck in Boston for a conference, out on a walk. Here's a guy drumming, a busker just out drumming, and ends up dancing the heck out of it with a random stranger. It's life-affirming. And then part 3, or part 1, depending on how you want to look at it, is where it all comes together. We see young Chuck, we learn about his upbringing, and you'll learn what the word cupola means and how it relates to buildings, or at least I learnt anyway. As I said, this is my favourite story of the collection. It really does tug on the heartstrings and shows that King can still do experimental formats, and that King, yes, he can do literary as well. This is really good. So third is If It Bleeds, which is a sequel to The Outsider, starring Holly fracking Gibney, and will spoil The Outsider for you if you haven't read that one already. So be warned. The main hook of this one is that Holly is watching news reports about a bomb at a school, and she soon realises that something doesn't quite add up about the local news reporter who happened to be first on scene. This one is packed full of Easter eggs, but I'm not going to go into them for fear of spoilers, other than to highlight my two favourites were, as we often get, a quick reference to Inside View, King's favourite fictional tabloid, and we get a nice use of the line, "Give me what I want and I'll go away," which of course comes from Storm of the Century. So this one was actually my least favourite, but I think a lot of that comes down to how much you like Holly. As a standalone story, it's fine, but also for me it just felt like a bit of an unnecessary remix of The Outsider that didn't really offer anything new. I'm not against a sequel to The Outsider per se, but I'd like something a little bit more interesting than If It Bleeds gave us. But that might just be me. So last up is Rat, a story about a struggling writer who decides to take himself away to his family's holiday home up in the woods in Maine to try and beat through his writer's block. He ends up locked down in a storm and finds himself in a monkey's paw type situation with a rat. This one feels like early King short stories. This has got that vibe, got that energy. It could easily fit in with Skeleton Crew, for example. It's fun, it's a bit scary, and it's also a bit silly. So Rat is set in a favourite King location, that unincorporated township of TR90 up in the woods in Maine where Bag of Bones was set. I don't know about you, but I always like it when King takes us into the woods. Some more Easter eggs that don't spoil the story in Rat. We get the line, "Everything was eventual," and the main character's email is Drew1981. Add up those numbers, what do you get? Lastly, it's interesting to see how quickly production companies snapped up the rights for everything in this book, as seems to be the way with any new King release now. So Mr. Harrigan's Phone got picked up by Netflix, and as you're watching this, is out. Darren Aronofsky has optioned Life of Chuck, and Ben Stiller has optioned Rat. The only one that hasn't got a definitive optioning is If It Bleeds, but there's a big assumption that HBO will take that as a bit of a sequel to their Outsider series, which they put out in 2020. Just goes to show how brightly the star of Stephen King continues to shine. So there we go, 19 reasons to read If It Bleeds, and hopefully nothing spoiled there for you. Let me know what you think of this one if you've already read it, or go and read it and then come back. Tell me which is your favourite story in If It Bleeds. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, click around, see what else you can find. There's also a few specials here. I've got a complete guide to the Dark Tower up there. And as you will have seen in the link below, don't forget to sign up to my newsletter so you get my mini collection of Mirrored and 10 Tiny Tales of Terror for free just for signing up. And in the newsletter itself, you'll get more short stories from me and loads of cool upcoming indie horror authors for you to check out, and some other stuff thrown in there too. Just sign up, you'll enjoy it, I promise. Next up, we've got the first of 2 books that came out in 2021, and we reach the point where I'm giving you 19 reasons to read books that I've already covered because I reviewed them when they came out. We are very nearly done. I'll see you later.